The chandelier glittered above the polished marble floors of our penthouse, casting fractured light across the room like a spiderweb of secrets. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of chilled water in my hand, watching the city skyline shimmer in the April dusk. Below me, the world buzzed with life, cars weaving through traffic, lights flickering on in distant towers, but up here, in this gilded cage I'd built, the air was thick with anticipation. Tonight, my husband Daniel and his cronies were sprawled across our leather sectional, their laughter sharp and cruel, slicing through the hum of the jazz I'd put on to drown them out. They didn't know I owned the company they worked for. They didn't know I'd spent years orchestrating their downfall. And they certainly didn't know that tomorrow, I'd burn their world to the ground. Daniel raised his whiskey glass, the amber liquid catching the light as he grinned at his friends. To Ethan's promotion, VP of Sales at Carver Industries. Took him long enough, but hey, at least someone in this room's climbing the ladder. His eyes slid to me, standing silently by the window, and his grin widened. Unlike some people who can't even get their foot in the door. The room erupted in laughter. Ethan, with his slicked-back hair and tailored suit. Marcus, the CFO with a perpetual smirk. Julian, the head of engineering who always carried a whiff of arrogance. And Liam, the quiet one, Daniel's right-hand man in operations, whose silence hid a calculating mind. They clinked glasses, their voices overlapping in a chorus of mockery. "Seriously, Claire," Marcus said, leaning back with a chuckle. "How many rejection letters this month? You keeping a scrapbook?" I forced a tight smile, the kind I'd perfected over 8 years of marriage to Daniel. "Oh, I've lost count," I said softly, playing the part of the defeated wife. Inside, my mind was a steel trap, cataloging every word, every jab. They thought I was a failure, a freelance graphic designer scraping by on odd jobs. They had no idea I was Evelyn Carver, the reclusive founder of Carver Industries, the woman who'd built their empire from a single laptop in a cramped studio apartment 12 years ago. Daniel loosened his tie. His cheeks flushed from the Scotch Me Scotch, from a bottle I'd bought to celebrate a merger he'd taken credit for. "Remember when she tried applying at Carver?" he said, his voice dripping with glee. "God, I'd have paid to see that interview. What a disaster that must have been." The irony was a bitter, delicious thing. That interview had been my quarterly check-in, a carefully staged inspection of their middle management, funneled through layers of shell companies and discreet hiring firms. I'd sat across from their HR lackeys, pretending to stumble over basic questions, while secretly evaluating how deep the rot had spread. And it was deeper than even I'd expected. I took a sip of water, the coolness grounding me as I watched them from across the room. 5 men in bespoke suits, senior executives at Carver Industries, all handpicked by me over the years. I'd built this company as a fortress after watching my mother's bakery collapse under predatory loans and corporate greed. It was my redemption, my legacy, and Daniel, my husband of 8 years, their VP of operations, had turned it into his personal playground. "Hey, sweetheart," Daniel called, his tone mockingly sweet. "Maybe try the diner on 5th. I hear they're hiring dishwashers." More laughter, sharp and jagged, filled the space. I kept my face neutral, the mask I'd worn since the day I met him at a charity gala 9 years ago. Back then, I'd already learned the hard way that success drew vultures. 3 ex-charming men who'd seen me as a meal ticket had taught me to hide my power. So when I met Daniel, I decided to test him. I traded my designer wardrobe for thrift store finds, my Mercedes for a beat-up sedan, and my penthouse for a modest 1-bedroom. I told him I was a struggling freelancer, and he'd eaten it up, promising to take care of me. First, he'd been kind, encouraging. "You'll figure it out, Claire," he'd say, kissing my forehead. But the moment we married and he moved into this penthouse thinking it was our house, paid for by his salary, the mask slipped. Success didn't change him, it revealed him. The man I'd married became a stranger who thrived on belittling others, especially me. "I think I'll head upstairs," I said quietly, setting my glass on the counter. "Big day tomorrow. Another interview." "Don't wait up, babe," Daniel replied, waving me off. "We're celebrating Ethan's big win. Might be a late one." I nodded, retreating to the spiral staircase, their laughter chasing me like a pack of hyenas. But as I climbed, I wasn't the broken woman they imagined. I was reviewing the dossier my private investigator, Nadia, had delivered last week proof of Daniel's backroom deals with competitors, Marcus's creative expense reports, Julian's sabotage of rival engineers, Ethan's harassment of female staff, and Liam's quiet orchestration of it all. Tomorrow I'd wield that inequality like a guillotine. In my private study, hidden behind a false wall panel, I settled into the leather chair I'd bought with my first $1 million. The room was a sanctuary soundproofed, locked with a biometric scanner, and lined with monitors displaying Carver Industries' global operations. My phone buzzed. A text from Nadia, my most trusted ally and one of the few who knew my true identity. Final docs in place. Board briefed. Tomorrow's meeting confirmed. 9 a.m. I smiled, tracing the edge of the termination letters on my desk, one for each of them, backed by months of airtight inequality. Downstairs, a glass shattered, followed by raucous laughter. Once, that carelessness would have infuriated me. Now, it was just another nail in their coffin's misuse of company property, documented by the discreet cameras I'd installed years ago. I closed my eyes, letting the hum of my computers wash over me. My mother's voice echoed in my mind. Power isn't about shouting, Evelyn. It's about waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment was hours away. I heard their cars pull out of the garage below, driven by my employees, who'd record their drunken rants for the files. One last night of pretense. Tomorrow I'd wake as Daniel's underestimated wife, but by sunset, I'd stand revealed as Evelyn Carver, CEO and architect of their ruin. Morning came with the precision of a predator's strike. I woke at 5 a.m., watching Daniel groan through his hangover as he stumbled into the shower. Late night. I asked, feigning concern. Yeah, he muttered, rubbing his temples. Big day at the office. Don't screw up your interview, huh? I smiled, pouring him coffee. Wouldn't dream of it. By 6:30, I was at Carver Industries headquarters, slipping through the Serre VYC entrance in a nondescript gray suit from a discount rack, a far cry from the Versace hanging in my real closet. Nadia met me in the basement security office, her dark eyes sharp as she handed me a VY Citers badge. Sophie Reynolds, interview candidate. Everything's set, she murmured. Your interview with HR is at 9. Daniel's team has their morning briefing at the same time. Carter's keeping them busy. Carter was my plant and senior management, a former Marine turned executive, loyal to me since I'd hired him out of obscurity 5 years ago. I clipped the badge to my blazer, feeling the weight of the charade. 4 years I'd run this company through encrypted calls and intermediaries, a phantom CEO no one had met. Today I'd step into the light. I sat in the lobby an hour early, flipping through last year's annual report, me own words staring back at me. Employees streamed past, oblivious to the woman who signed their checks. At 8:45, Daniel strode through, barking into his phone, not sparing me a glance. Perfect. MS. Reynolds. An HR rep, Greg, appeared at 9 sharp. I'd hired him 3 years ago, competent but spineless, always eager to kiss up to Daniel's crew. Follow me. The elevator ride was a study in corporate banality. Nice weather today, Greg said. Traffic wasn't bad. Small miracles, I replied, keeping my tone meek. He led me through the open-plan office I'd designed, a space meant to foster collaboration, now poisoned by Daniel's clique. We'll start with a skills test, Greg said, his voice tinged with condescension, then a panel interview. The test was laughable, basic Excel formulas I could have coded blindfolded. I fumbled a few answers, playing the nervous applicant, while through the glass walls, I watched Daniel's team yuck it up in their meeting. Greg reviewed my work with a smirk. Interesting. Let's move to the panel. The conference room overlooked the city, a view I usually savored from my private suite 20 floors up. 3 middle managers waited, their faces a gallery of boredom and disdain. I knew them all: Tom, who'd buried harassment complaints, Lisa, who'd fudged project timelines for Marcus, and Raj, who'd laughed off Julian's sabotage. So MS. Reynolds, Tom began, not bothering with introductions. You've been out of work a while. What's the story? I let my voice tremble. It's been tough. The market's brutal. And what makes you think you're cut out for Carver? Lisa asked, scrolling her phone. I've got skills, I said, launching into a rehearsed tale of desperation and half-truths. They barely listened, their dismissiveness palpable. Then Daniel passed by the glass wall, did a double take and smirked. Seconds later, their phones buzzed in unison. I didn't need to see the screens to know he'd texted them about his wife's latest flop. The rest of the interview was a slow-motion car wreck. Subtle digs, eye rolls, yawns. I cataloged every violation of Carver's HR policies, my mask never slipping. "We'll be in touch," Greg said finally, his tone a death knell. As I headed for the elevator, Daniel's voice carried from around the corner. "No way, that was Claire. She's really scraping the bottom now. Did you see that suit? Target clearance rack, I bet." Their laughter fueled me. In my purse, my real phone buzzed. "Nadia. Board arriving. Legal ready. Security on standby." I slipped into a restroom, locking the last stall. Inside a hidden garment bag was my true armor. A tailored black Saint Laurent suit, Louboutin heels, and my CEO badge. I shed Sophie Reynolds like a snake sheds skin, emerging as Evelyn Carver. My reflection in the mirror was steel and fire. The pearl earrings my mother had left me glinting like a promise kept. I stepped out, heels clicking against marble, and employees froze, whispering as they tried to place me. The private elevator whisked me to the executive floor. Through the boardroom's frosted glass, I saw the silhouettes of my directors, but first I had a stop to make. Daniel's team was still in their conference room, the door ajar. I lingered in the shadows, listening. "You should have seen her face," Daniel was saying, his voice smug. "My own wife thinking she could hack it here. What's next, CEO?" Laughter roared. "Delusions of grandeur," Marcus added. "Remember when she tried advising us on the Kessler deal at your anniversary party? Priceless. The Kessler deal me strategy, fed through proxies, had netted us $50 million. I stepped into the doorway, my shadow cutting through their mirth. "Actually," I said, my voice ablade, "I'll deliver the news myself." Silence crashed over them. Daniel's glass froze midair, his face paling. "Claire? What the hell are you doing here? Dressed like the CEO of Carver Industries?" I finished stepping inside. "Exactly like that." Marcus laughed, then stopped when no one joined him. Carter gathered his papers, a faint smirk on his lips. "This is a restricted floor," Daniel sputtered. "Security." "They're here," I said as two guards appeared behind me. I pulled out my phone, sending a text. Every screen in the room lit up with Carver's Incorporation papers, me signature. My photo. "Evelyn Carver," I announced. "Founder and CEO. Or, as you know me, Daniel's unemployable wife." Daniel's face went from white to gray. "This is impossible. You're just what? Your punching bag? Your joke." I moved to the head of the table and sat. "Tell me, how does it feel to realize you've been mocking your boss for years?" Marcus bolted up, chair screeching. "Sit," I commanded, my voice ice. "None of you are leaving yet." Another tap on my phone, and the screen shifted. Security footage, emails, recordings of their cruelty, their corruption. "An interesting leadership style," I said, watching them squirm. "Bullying, fraud, harassment. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" "Evelyn, honey," Daniel tried, his tone wheedling. "We can explain." "You've explained enough," I cut him off. "Every dinner party, every snide remark, every betrayal. You've made your character clear." I stood, smoothing my suit. "The board's waiting to formalize your terminations for cause. All of you." I met Daniel's eyes last. "And thank you. You've made this easy." "You can't," he whispered, but I was already MOYing. I slid off my wedding ring, dropping it on the table. "As of this morning, I'm just your ex-CEO. And you're fired." Security stepped forward as I turned away, their protests fading into noise. The boardroom awaited, the real work was about to begin. The board meeting was a surgical strike. 12 directors watched as I signed the terminations, their faces a mix of awe and unease. "This is just the start," I said, sliding the papers to Nadia. "We're cleaning house." Back in my office, a top-floor suite shrouded in rumors, I watched security escort Daniel and his crew out. Nadia followed me in, tablet glowing. Access revoked, accounts frozen, data backed up. Legal sent cease and desist orders. "The house?" I asked, thinking of the penthouse Daniel thought he'd earned. Security's there changing locks. Your things are at the new condo. His are en route to his sister's. I nodded, picturing his sister Laura, who'd always sneered at my lack of ambition. The irony would sting. Divorce papers? Filed. The prenup's airtight thought he was protecting his wealth. Nadia smirked. He never suspected it was yours. A notification pinged Daniel posting on LinkedIn about strategic differences with Carver's leadership. Nadia's team countered with a press release. Carver Industries enforces zero-tolerance policy on misconduct. His VP title vanished from his profile in real time. They'll fight back, I said, pulling up contingency plans. Audit everything they've touched 3 years back. Flag their client contacts. My phone buzzed. Daniel blocked. Then Marcus, Julian, Ethan, Liam all blocked, archived for legal. Company statement? Nadia asked. Tomorrow. All hands meeting. Time they met their real CEO. By evening, the penthouse was mine again, Daniel's belongings gone. I stood at the window watching the city settle into night, savoring the calm before the storm's next wave. The all-hands meeting was electric. At 10 a.m., I stepped onto the auditorium stage, 500 employees staring up at me. Good morning, I said, voice steady. I'm Evelyn Carver, founder and CEO. Some knew me as Daniel Morrison's wife. Today, you'll know me as your leader. The silence was a levying thing. Yesterday, we terminated 5 executives for misconduct, yes, including my husband. But this isn't about them. It's about us. For an hour, I dismantled their toxic legacy, unveiling new policies, open-door access, a future free of fear. The applause grew from hesitant to thunderous. Back in my office, I met with Daniel's former reports, sifting allies from threats. 3 resigned by noon. 2 offered dirt for leniency. Daniel's at a bar with Marcus and Ethan, Nadia reported. Surveillance is on it. Let them talk, I said. Every word's more rope. That night, the bar footage rolled in. Daniel, slurring about a merger he'd rigged with insider tips. Send it to legal and the SEC Anonymous, I ordered. Activate protocol Eclipse. Eclipse was my Engamia multi-phase trap to bury them. Phase 1. Leak the merger story to the press as a whistleblower tip. By morning, Carver stock dipped, and they panicked, selling shares. Phase 2. Announce a new government contract, spiking the stock. They'd sold low, incriminating themselves with insider trading. They're suing, Nadia said days later, as the SEC probed their accounts. And Daniel tried to flee, passport flagged. I smiled. Good. Their lawyers begged for a meeting. I declined, watching their assets freeze, lawsuits pile up, lives unravel. Then came the final act. 9 a.m. 6 months later. Daniel, Marcus, Ethan, Julian, and Liam sat across from me, broken shells of men. The boardroom loomed behind us, SEC reps waiting. Sign, I said, sliding amnesty deals forward. Confess everything, return your gains, or face prison. They signed. Daniel last, his hand shaking. You trapped me, he whispered. No, I said. You trapped yourself. As they were led away, I turned to the board, outlining a future of growth and accountability. 6 months on, Carver thrived, profits soared, employees flourished, and the toxic past was ash. Daniel sold electronics in Ohio. Marcus taught ethics in obscurity. The others faded into irrelevance. Standing at my window, I watched autumn leaves fall. Any regrets? Nadia asked. None, I said. Just lessons. The real VY Tory wasn't their fall, it was the rise of everyone they'd crushed. And I'd build on that, brick by brick, until the shadows they'd cast were gone forever.
If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.